Hey, 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 twisted people. It's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, aka Twisted Woman CKR. And thank you so much for joining me for what is probably going to be a little bit of a rant. Because we are talking American Horror Story, Double Feature, Red Tide, Episode 6, mid-season finale, sort of, because it's not really a finale, but it was a finale of Red Tide, right? Which is, because it's a double feature, there's a part 1, part 2. We are talking about it, y'all. We got to talk about it. It is something. Maybe it's typical Ryan Murphy. I don't know. How y'all doing? Because we got to talk about this. Thank you all for joining me in the live chat. Those of you who are joining, hopefully you can you see and hear me well okay right now? Let me know if there's any technical issue. You might need to if you were on here before I started, you might need to refresh it and maybe that can help. So that might help that, because I can see myself very well. It doesn't look like I'm buffering. So you might want to refresh that. So that's great. And if you can hear me, that's awesome. Thanks for joining me in the chat. Mark is already saying typical American Horror Story ending, and we got to talk about it, right? Ray, thanks for joining. It's saying, I still can't get over the husband. He was so cruel. My heart hurt watching him and how he treated his wife. Please just leave your partner before you get that bitter. Very true. Tad, thanks for joining. I love Mary. Yeah, Mary Cherry, Ursula, right? So yeah. Thanks for the hearts, y'all. So y'all, it is something what that was. So we're going to talk about American Horror Story. We're going to talk about Red Tide. I also want to talk about what y'all may think in terms of the predictions for Death Valley, right? So starting next week, we go right into Death Valley, which is a part 2 of this season. And I want to know, and we'll get to it, on whether or not you think it's going to be greatly connected, loosely connected. We see some repeats of actors in this, not playing the same characters. So we'll see that as well. And whether or not it's connected, I think it is connected. I think it's very much connected, actually, to Red Tide. How connected? I think it could be an epic connection, but I also think it might also just be what American Horror Story does and just be really basic in terms of the obvious connection, which is the pills. And so we'll see where that goes. But okay, y'all. So we got episode 6, which was one of the shorter episodes of the season. It was about 30 something minutes. Because once the credits rolled, I was like, that's it. It was like we were already at the end. I thought maybe, I was like, okay, it's only been this long. Maybe there's another twist. Maybe there's something else going on. And then it just ended. There were some great moments, but mostly it was not that good, in my opinion. But let me know, y'all, if you could give this episode a grade, what would it be? I always ask y'all that because I'm always curious how you would grade an episode before I just throw out my grade. And did you think this stuck the landing? Do you think this stuck the landing of what we got for all those episodes leading up to this moment? And I want to know what you all think about that. Because I'm going to say I don't think it stuck the landing, unfortunately. Because I don't think it stuck the landing. I would definitely give this about a C- for a number of reasons. And we'll get into that. So we have a few things that happened this episode. So we'll focus in on what happened leading up to all chaos breaking loose in that moment when we saw the demise of Belle and Austin, and then what happened afterwards. Because those are kind of the main 2 things, and what happened with these characters, and how certain characters didn't get the justice or that they could have gotten. Mark is saying a D-. Definitely. I feel that. Mark is saying shortest finale. Yes. Ray is saying C-. Josh, thanks for joining us in the chat, Josh. Josh is saying, I think a C as well. Ray is saying, this episode seems so rushed and haphazard. Agreed. Solomon is saying, this finale gets a D as it reminded me of the nonsense of American Horror Stories, which is the spinoff series, which is supposed to be like more one-off stories of American Horror Story universe. And I agree with you, Solomon. If people watch my live streams, American Horror Stories, you can watch it on my channel here. It was not a very good season, in my opinion. It was very, very lopsided. And one of those was because a lot of stuff felt rushed. It felt kind of basics, very basic. Just kind of the choices that were made were basic. And it was like all the creativity, and that's what you come up with for certain things. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it was. And I feel like this was very much similar to that. So I don't know. Maybe I should have put an altar to Belle, that god, that demon god, because Alma did not meet her demise, y'all. She didn't. And I don't even know how you can have a satisfying ending when that little girl gets to go off and live her life. I don't really know. But I knew there was a chance. I knew there was a chance this was going to happen, because Ryan Murphy has a tendency to exalt the people who are horrible characters, and somehow he thinks those are the protagonists everyone should care about. And I don't know why I thought that somehow he would have Alma kind of meet her demise. Although I do want to talk about what happened to Alma when it comes to her trying out on auditioning, because I do think there's a little irony there when it comes to Alma, that maybe in a way she got it the worst in terms of for herself. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. So what happened, right? What happened this episode? The old sheriff's body was found. I was hoping that it wasn't I was hoping it was going to be Karen, and that she was alive, and somehow she was just kind of like, half drowned or something like that. But that's not what happened. We had hoped it was Karen. I don't know. Maybe you hoped it was Karen. Let me know if you hoped it was Karen. I had hoped it was, and that she would be alive and taken into the hospital or something like that. But it wasn't. It was the old sheriff who had basically been in the water for days, because somehow that's the way they got rid of her body. Like, why not burn it? What? Like, it was so sloppy the way Harry and Ursula and Alma in a way was in covering up what they were doing in the town and all the mess they were making. And the fact that they just dumped her in the water was like, what? That's what you did with the body? Okay, sure. And so she was found, and, that put out an alert. So we then get to see that the town is pretty much in on all of it. The town is very much aware that these things happen, and they do it because they kind of have an agreement that, oh, great artists come here during the winter so they can brag about it, and you guys leave by the summertime and nothing bad happens and we're good. And so that was fine. We kind of knew that was kind of going to be the case, so it's fine that it happened that way. So then what we get is the whole thing. Harry basically says, I finished the best written thing I've ever written, and so I'm ready to go. And he's like, Alma, you're not taking the pills anymore. We're moving on. We all know, once again, with the show being kind of predictable at this point, for whatever reason, it really just got real predictable that Alma was not going to take that. And neither was Ursula, right? And so the whole thing of her hugging him and things, I was just like, well, we see this coming a mile away, that she's not going to be okay with this. So it was like, all right. And then Belle and Austin take the baby, and they have that confrontation. And we have Ursula somehow convincing the Pell people to take this other pill that the chemist came up with, which makes them attack everybody, whether they took the pill or not. So I guess the chemist came up with a thing, because before, the pill just made it so that the Pell people only attack people who didn't take the pill. But now the chemist somehow was able to create something that would make them attack everybody, even pill takers. All right, sure. And then we had Austin and Belle kind of have an anticlimactic end. It was so anticlimactic. It was like, they really are going to get taken out that way. Okay, sure, I guess. And it was just like, why? And Rachel is pointing out, thanks for joining us in the chat. Rachel is saying it was very predictable that Alma was going to kill her father. It was so predictable. And And I guess had the same thing not happened to Doris, right? Because if y'all were watching my previous live stream, y'all know I had hopes that there would be some type of twist. I was guessing a twist for her at every moment where it was very seemingly marching towards what we figured it was going to be, right? I was like, well, maybe the twist is that she won't take the pill and she'll take down Harry and Alma. Or maybe the twist is she takes the pill, but she's secretly talented. Okay, she's not secretly talented. Okay, maybe she'll take the pill and she turns into a Pell person, but she becomes a sentient Pell person who's able to like rally the other Pell people into a Pell person revolution, and they take out Alma. I had so many ways that they could have made this less predictable for Doris, and they didn't do any of them. They just went the very predictable route of Doris going. So when it came to the Alma stuff with this episode, I could have held out hope that there was going to be a twist, but seeing how they treated the very obvious Doris plot line, I was like, there's no way they're going to twist this. She's just going to end up winning. That's what we're going to get here. That's what we're going to get. Let me see what y'all are saying. Josh is saying, it seems like they just turn out these seasons now with not a lot of thought and direction. Yeah, I mean, Josh, I think, and what do y'all think about that? I think this season had a lot of potential, and I think that's why this season finale, or this part finale, really disappointed me, because I thought the first couple of episodes of Red Tide were phenomenal. I love that they set this tone. It actually seemed like they were leaning more into the horror elements of the genre, and not just taking certain elements and kind of being a little quirky like some of the seasons have done before, where it's not really scary, it's just kind of quirky with horror elements. And I love that. And some of the moments and some of the characters were really engrossing. I love the flashback episode. All of that really worked. Yet somehow between this finale and maybe the episode before, but Gaslight was on point. I ain't even gonna lie. Gaslight was on point. Although I hated the ending for Doris, it was still a very eerie and creepy episode. But for whatever reason, this finale just didn't work. And I thought to myself, what is he? Who is Ryan Murphy at this point? Stephen King? He can't end this thing, right? Because, the joke goes that Stephen King, for those of you who read his stuff, he can write usually such a wonderful book, right? And wonderful stories, and his endings usually suck. That's just what you get used to. Wonderful stories, the ending kind of suck. And I was just like, is Ryan Murphy like the Stephen King of TV? Where it's like he can write these wonderful stories and then the ending always just sucks? Like, wow, what are we doing here? Mark has some questions and thoughts. Let's see what Mark is saying. Alma and Ursula are ruthless and survivors. I knew they wouldn't be killed off. I was confused as to why Holden was on the city council, because he said he only stayed there in the summer. Plot hole. Definitely a plot hole. Or maybe he was lying, right? Maybe he was lying to the sheriff. Hino, thanks for joining us in the live chat. Hino is saying 6 out of 10 for the grade. Absolutely not. Some of the character endings didn't make sense at all. There's a theory online saying that part 2 will merge with Red Tide. We will eventually head back to Provincetown. I hope you're right. And let's get into that in a little bit, right? What I want to ask you all, and we'll have a discussion about this, is how do you think Death Valley is going to connect to Red Tide? So we definitely should get into that. Mark is saying, how does Ursula get people to do what she wants? She made Harry stay in P-Town. She made Belle and Austin stop singing. She made Mickey try to kill her. Not try to kill her. She controlled Doris. She controlled so much. Yeah, she controlled the Pell people. Where does her hold on people come from? Well, with the Pell people, Mark, that was based off of a pill that the chemist gave her. She took a risk, but she was able to get them to take the pill that the chemist came up with, which made them attack everybody or people who took the pill, something like that. I don't know how it worked. A little bit of a plot hole, if you ask me, but sure. Vera, thanks for joining us in the live chat. Vera saying, hey guys, yeah, the ending was trash, and justice for TB Karen. Yes. Like I said, justice for Karen and justice for Doris, because, oh my gosh, I thought Karen was going to be found alive in the water, like drowning or something. And that's not what happened. And she just died. And Doris just became a Pell person. And then we got this finale, right? So, okay. So we got the whole thing. Belle and Austin have a very anticlimactic demise. And then basically Alma does what we figured she would do. She kills Harry. Harry also, in a way, has an anticlimactic demise. Very, very anticlimactic with everything that happened. And then we find out the twist is that the chemist was have in cahoots with Ursula all along. And we kind of saw that coming in a way, because remember, if you remember from some of my previous I think maybe it was like episode 3 or 2, I asked this question. When Ursula originally went to meet with the chemist, we didn't see the rest of the discussion, right? It cut off, and then we had the chemist going to Belle, telling her about them. That's all we got. And so I said, in typical American Horror Story fashion, we may find out that, you know, we didn't find out all that happened because she was in cahoots. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The chemist was in cahoots with Ursula for, I guess, more power and things like that. And Vera is saying more holes than Swiss cheese. Yes, in terms of the plotting, there were more holes than Swiss cheese. I agree with you, Vera. Definitely. So, you know, the chemist goes in cahoots, and then we like fast forward. What was it, like 3 months or something like that? We fast forward 3 months, 9 months, whatever. Doesn't even matter. It just fast forwards, and they're back in Hollywood. And at this point, Ursula is basically just passing out these black pills like friggin' candy. The chemist is kind of doing a thing where she's getting revenge, and I guess she feels like she's sort of helping her community by getting rid of racist cops. I mean, not too horrible, but I mean, it's kind of also a very crazy way of doing it. And Alma, in a way, kind of has two moms at this point, right? In a way, you know, the chemist and Ursula are raising her in a way. And Alma is just as annoying as ever. And so what we have is them being in Hollywood and Ursula trying to get more people. So it was like, okay, I guess. All right. Is that really it? Like, what's happening here? I think that was my issue. I was like, okay, they made it to Hollywood. There's got to be another twist coming, right? Right. Like, there's got to be something else. It can't just be that they outmaneuvered everybody. You know, Belle and Austin just kind of anticlimactic demise. They just kind of got away with it. And I was like, well, you know, this is American Horror Story. Yeah, they totally could get away with it. Because if y'all remember, if those of you who watched American Horror Stories, spoiler alert if you haven't, for one of those characters who really shouldn't have gotten away with anything, they totally did. And they shouldn't have. They really just shouldn't have. And so, and that's not the first time Ryan has done stuff like that, right? I was part of the Glee fandom. For all you Glee warriors out there who had to deal with that ridiculous fandom, it was very, very tense place to exist. And it was the same kind of thing. He had horrible characters who always seemed to come out on top. And the characters that should have done better didn't. He has a tendency to do that. And I don't know if that's his life philosophy. Maybe there's some life philosophy in Ryan stuff where he's just kind of like, I'm letting the world know that life isn't fair and people who don't deserve better end up doing, and that's your lesson. I don't know, but he does that a lot. And it's just so hard sometimes to watch his stuff knowing that it's probably going to be the most atrocious character that gets to get away with stuff. Right? Now, I will say with Alma, I think there was a little bit of irony, and following me here with this, guys. I think there was a little bit of irony. I loved the scene with her and the other young prodigy. So she's in there. She's like, you're not as good as me. She's just as cocky as ever, right? And so I love the monologue that he gave her, because he was like, you're not special anymore. See, he's like, you know, this is the thing. When you were just a solo person in your town, a big fish in a little pond, you know, yeah, that's a thing. But now you're around other people. We all are or were child prodigies. So, you know what I mean? You know, we all are or were child prodigies. You aren't special anymore. You're no longer the most talented person in the room. We all are talented in this room. And I kind of love that. And I kind of hope that they had leaned more on that, because to me, that would have been the ultimate hell for Alma. You know, I mean, I know before I was advocating for her to have stumps so she couldn't play. But I was thinking too lowbrow, y'all. What it really should be is the idea that, yeah, that she's so talented and stuff like that. But this is the thing. You're not the most talented person. And there are people who are maybe better players than you. And they didn't have to take a black pill to get there. Although the guy ends up getting killed at the end because Alma kills him, I would have loved it had she played at her best. And maybe there was another little girl there, or maybe the guy, because he explains to her, you're not going to get picked because they're not going to go with you because you're just like a freak show right now. So they won't do it until you're older, that they had picked the other guy. And that the idea would have been that even at your best, there is probably someone better. And you're going to have to deal with that. Even on the black pill, at your peak, there is someone better. And that you are now going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of other talented people. And you're no longer going to be the big fish in the little pond. And in a way, we kind of got that. And I almost feel like it kind of foretold itself that she can't keep killing all of her competition, right? Eventually, it's going to be found out if she keeps killing or maiming all of her competition. So I feel like, in a way, she got what she wanted, but it's not going to go as well as she wants it to go because, well, even if she's a prodigy at 9, well, eventually she's going to be 10 and 12 and older. And then some other prodigy comes along. Is she just going to keep being great for her? So I'm hoping, although I don't give them much credit for that irony, I hope that that was kind of what they were conveying, because I love that they gave the young guy that speech to explain to her, you're not special anymore. There are other talented people out there. Deal with it, right? Let me know what y'all think about that. Mark is saying, AG, the end of Gaslight, Ursula was going to see the chemist again. So that adds up. It's just some things happened off screen. That's true. In some regards. Vera is saying the actress that played Alma is very talented. I agree. She made me hate her, and that's pretty good to do. Yeah, Mark is saying Alma's irony, she peaks at 9 years old. That could be the irony, right? Solomon is saying, I agree. Seeing that Alma couldn't stand that the other prodigy was as talented as her without the black pill was satisfying to watch. It really was, because she was really telling him, she was like, you're not as good to me. And he even asked her, he was like, did you watch me play? and she was like, no, I didn't have to. I was better. He's like, no, that's not how this works here. He was like, I graduated. And he was like, what was it? Harvard or Yale at 16. He was like, you're not the only prodigy. You're one of many. Like, all of us are talented here, and that actually also lines up to the fact that, we forget it because we hate her so much, but Alma is 9 and she was not mature enough to take that pill. She really wasn't. Not even, because the human brain, from my understanding, I think it keeps developing until you're about 22. That's what I think it is. I think the human brain continues to develop until you're 22. So most people, especially young people, their brains are still developing, especially a 9-year-old. And so for her to take this and not really understand the concept, because heck, a lot of people don't understand the concept of talent and balance and things like that. For her to be so obsessed with something and take this pill, and now her life is trying to be the best at something that you possibly can't really be no one can really be the best at anything, because there's always the +1 element, right? AKA, there's always going to be someone slightly better than you. Even if they don't exist right now, they will eventually exist, So trying to be absolutely the best in an absolute doesn't work. It just doesn't. And I would have preferred for that lesson of Alma's to be more prominent, but I was glad that it was sorted there. Although they did the cheap thing by making her kill the guy and then smiling at it. I'm just thinking to myself, eventually they have to have her get caught, because that's ridiculous. So, and then what we had is all pandemonium in Hollywood, right? And let me know, y'all, what did y'all think of Ursula's speech at the end as the chemist drives off with the baby? Now the chemist has a kid and she's driving off. She's leaving town. So she basically left Alma and Ursula to their devices in Hollywood. And so I guess that was fine. it was kind of anticlimactic. I love some of Ursula's scenes because they were so over the top, especially with the writer guy and stuff like that. I kind of liked it. But once again, it was that character being that kind of character. It was predictable. It was like, well, we've seen this kind of thing before. And I say this as someone, I live in Hollywood, y'all, in Los Angeles. And as someone who lives in you know, Tinseltown or whatever, there's some truth to it, right? The whole idea that everyone wants to make it, but, you know, not everyone wants to put in that work and all this other stuff. And the whole idea of what success really means for people. And so when I watched it, I was like, oh, I could totally see this happening in this town. So I was telling my boyfriend while we were watching, I was just like, I mean, could you imagine if even half of this town of people took that black pill? Yeah, we'd have a whole outlaw. We'd have a lot of Pell people walking around. And that's not me saying like, oh, I want to be a Pell person or something like that. It's just the idea that so many people want the quick way of things. You know what I mean? And so it was okay. So once again, it was Ryan kind of talking through his characters, because that's what he does with the character like Ursula. And we've seen it before with the actress who plays Ursula. He tends to make her and some others the spokesperson for some of his messaging when it comes to Hollywood or meta and things like that. He does this with other characters too, but a lot with her kind of character that she plays. So it was fine, but it was like, we've seen this before. Get back to the story. We don't need to be, you've told us what you think about Hollywood, Ryan. We know it's cool. You know? Solomon is saying, I agree. Seeing that Alma couldn't stand that other prodigy was as talented as her without the black pill was satisfying to watch. I already highlighted. Tad is saying, hey, loved ones. Hey, Tad. Hino is saying the chemist leaving Ursula and Alma basically sets them both to fail without any more access to the black pills. That as well. I wonder, did she, I didn't think about that. Do you think she gave them a lot of supply though? I mean, that's the other question. Like, how much of a supply did she leave them? I think, but that, I would love if she left them without a supply. I would love that because that would make it so Alma would not be able to play as great as she does. I would love that. The question is, though, did she give them a large supply before she left? Maybe she made them a whole bunch that could last them for some years before she goes. So that was also left up in the air a little bit. But I like what you're thinking, Hino, that maybe she left them high and dry. That would be great. Vera is saying, that poor baby. I always thought they would do a boarding school season with all the different children affected by the American Horror Story world, like Alma or Lee's daughter from Roanoke. Yeah. That would be cool. So you just gave them my idea, Vera. You gotta pitch that to Ryan. Solomon saying, if the show has established that the chemist was solely an agent of chaos, then the finale and all of her actions would have made more sense. That too. Although yes, if they had established her as agent of chaos, yes, that would have made more sense. Although they didn't, right? It was more like, well, the way she explained it to Alma, that was another thing. It was like, what is the chemist? What is her end game, right? That's the other question. What does the chemist want? Because it seemed like the chemist was like, well, the military is not going to come after me because they don't want anyone to know about this or whatever, which maybe we'll see in Death Valley if it comes back around, maybe they do find the chemist. So I don't know. I feel like it's interesting how that would work, because what is her end game? What does she really want? Will we find out that maybe the chemist is an alien? You know, I mean, what's the chemist's origin story? We don't know the chemist's origin story. All we heard throughout Red Tie is that somehow she ended up working with the military. And that's how she came to create the pill. I hope, and we'll start talking about this when we talk about the connection to Death Valley, that maybe they explore that. How did the pill come to be, right? So that could be something we get into. And it would make what you're saying, Solomon, make a lot of sense. Tad is saying, did it remind anyone else with the shingles? It was so like Doris and her samples. Yeah, I mean, what you mean with like when it comes to shingles? Yeah. Mark is saying, as far as supply, they need a pill every 5 days. So yeah, she probably could give them enough to last. Well, it would be a lot of pills she'd have to make. So I don't know. Deb is saying, hey, Deb, thanks for joining us in live chat. The chemist was worried about Ursula creating too many Pell people. So I think she's seen her as a risk or a reckless. Exactly. So you're right that maybe she left her high and dry, which would go with what Hino was saying, that if she felt like she was causing too much problems, she probably didn't give her enough of a supply to last her. So maybe one could hope, y'all, that Alma was left high and dry. I would love that. Mark is saying Ursula would be more of an agent of chaos. The chemist was against her being so willy-nilly with the pills. Yep. Tad is saying Alma is the reason I don't have kids. Hey, Tad, I'm with you. I got 3 cats. I love animals, and that's me giving back to the world, helping with the animals. Yeah, and y'all, I just want to remind you, if you haven't already, please do give this video a like or a thumbs up. Feed the algorithm monster. It's always appreciated. And if you want to show some super chat love, that's always appreciated. But I love talking to you all, regardless of whether you show the super chat or not, but it's always appreciated. But yeah, give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. But yeah, like, you know, this thing with, let's see what, hey, Jorge, thanks for joining. Jorge saying, sorry, I'm late, but that finale, I guess American Horror Story doesn't disappoint with lackluster finales. You are absolutely correct. That's what we've been talking about. It was very lackluster, which is disappointing though, because this started out like such a very strong season. Like it was so strong. And then like the last episode just even that cheesy line that Alma gave when she was feeding on Harry, she turns around like, do you mind? I don't like when people watch me when I eat. I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we? The 90s? What is this? What kind of cheesy line is this? Like, we're above this. We are past this kind of stuff. Can we not? But yeah, you are absolutely right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the chemist ends up leaving them. Let's go with what Hino was saying, that leaves them high and dry, because either way, even if she gave them a lot, it wouldn't be enough for years on end. So it's very clear that she left them and that she's not giving them pills anymore. So one can hope for that. But then we get to Death Valley, y'all. We got I don't know if y'all saw the trailer for Death Valley, but it was very good. A lot of stuff going on there. Seems like we're going to get a lot of historical figures in Death Valley in part 2. And the question is, how does this connect to Red Tide? Because I do not believe that they made this a double feature just because they felt like telling too many stories. I do not think that's why this is the way it is, especially with the way they were doing the promo of the vampire making out with the alien. I really honestly do believe that these stories are going to be connected. Now, I know there are some theories. One of the theories I saw in the dark interwebs was that Harry's story that he was writing is the story of Death Valley, and that somehow his story, people were saying that he was writing the story that we're going to get in Death Valley, and that's the connection, that the story he's writing is the story of Death Valley. Now, do y'all think that's a possibility? I think it could be a possibility, but only in so much. Oh, sorry, I hit the thing. Only in so much that maybe something was speaking through him. And because I wouldn't want it to be that all of it was fiction, right? I don't want Death Valley to be fiction. That would be whack. But if it was something where it's like, this is how the aliens tell their story through Harry, somehow, I could see them doing that. But that's what some people think. I want to know y'all theories. Let me know in the comment section and also in the live chat. What are your theories on how this is connected? My honest, very obvious theory of how this is all connected is that the aliens are trying to maybe save themselves or maybe connect with humans, and they create the pill, the black pill or something, or whatever the first like version of the black pill was, whether it was just a liquid or whatever, to give out to humans or something. And maybe there's side effects, I don't know. And that's how we got the black pill. That's the most basic, straightforward one. And I do think in some way the chemist plays a part in that. Now, whether the chemist is just straight up just a person who took advantage, a scientist who took advantage and decided to just go on a business for herself, maybe. Or maybe the chemist is an alien. And this is part of her mission to like pass it around the world or something and see how they can help humanity and help aliens. It's a kind of haphazard theory. That's where I'm going with it. But that's all I got so far with that. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think, what that connection might be. But I do think it's connected. And I know we've been told that that if we watch Red Tide, that there's little connections here and there. And I think the most connection is that black pill, to be honest. But Mark is saying, I think the endings are a part of American Horror Story success. They keep you going till the end, and they give you just enough not to satisfy you and leave you hungry for more. We all gonna watch episode 7, right? But this is the thing, Mark. I would have watched episode 7 had I been satisfied with episode 6. In fact, I would have been really excited. But now that I see the way they ended it, I'm like, oh, they might be on some bull this season. So I gotta kind of go in there knowing that, well, it might be crap. So that ending may not land. So I just gotta like set myself up for disappointment. Mark is saying, I heard the last episode is titled Red Tide, so hopefully it goes back to P-Town. True. Mark saying the flashes of Harry's writing did not confirm that. I think that would be the easy way out, but American Horror Story, exactly. But that's the theory, right? That he was writing the story the whole time. I don't think that's what it was, because I just don't want it to be some meta kind of story he came up with. But I think they could do better. Okay, so Jorge is saying, I believe so that Harry wrote Death Valley. So the question is, do you think he wrote it, right, being channeled to him by aliens, or what happened? Or do you think they're going to make it so that he just wrote it and that Death Valley is just simply a TV show? And at the end of the last episode, it's just a TV show that goes up as his last work. I would go with the first one, because that would just make more sense, being channeled. And I think that would just be better than it just being some like show, his last testament, as what he said. Rachel is saying it's probably a fake out and there's no connection. No, Rachel, I want there to be a connection. There needs to be a connection, because they gotta redeem whatever it was that happened at the end of Red Tide. And I feel like the only way to redeem this part of the season is for it to be connected in one big story. Tad is saying, where's Karen's picture? Why was the city council scene necessary? Did no one wonder about yeah, that's the question too, right? It was out of nowhere. Mark's saying, right, I was pretty pissed about not seeing her painting. Yeah. But then maybe they felt like nothing of her painting would do justice, right? That's probably was just maybe a technical thing. Tad is saying, personally, I would have had different plans with the guy in the pool house. I'm sure he was, yeah, I can see that. I can see it, Dad. Jorge is saying, after American Horror Stories, it might all be a show. No, y'all, I hope not. I'm going to be so annoyed. And I'm going to blame all of you who are saying that. I'm going to come back. I'm going to point. I'm going to Jorge. I'm going to be like, you said this and they listened. You were right. And I don't want it to be right. Sabeti, hey, Sabeti, thanks. Oh, never, late is okay. You're here. And that's what matters. We were just talking about how many of us were disappointed in this episode. Solomon is saying, I can see the cheesy looking teen slasher with Kaya Gerber being Harry's movie. Not sure about the 50s alien portions. Yeah. No, I want there to be a connection, only because it just seems silly if there's not. And like someone pointed out, if the final episode is called Red Tide, it would make sense that it would all come back. I just don't want it to be something meta where it just was all Harry's, like his final TV show before he got killed or something. I just think that would be such a waste. Sabetti's saying, I was so what the WTF after this episode. Exactly. Many of us were, Sabetti. Many of us were. Mark is saying, well, it never really shows of Karen was talented or not. Maybe her painting was crap. Well, I think we can. I do think Karen was talented, probably only because she didn't start going crazy like Doris did, and she wasn't losing her hair, or at least it didn't seem like she was, and she still seemed very sentient. So Like, she seemed very aware and conscious. And that's the only reason why I think that she was probably talented. Also, we saw her paintings in previous, right? Mickey had her paintings and they were beautiful. So she can paint, you know, unlike, unfortunately, Doris, were drawing stick figure houses and things like that, and beige on beige. So Betty is saying, if this was someone's fever dream, I'll be so disappointed. Yeah, I don't think Red Tide is, I don't think the first half of this season is someone's fever dream. What I think is that there might be a chance that the second half might be Harry's TV show that he wrote. I just hope it's not that. And if it is the TV show he wrote, I hope it's the aliens having had channeled through him to have him write it. So I don't know. I kind of hope that that's where it goes with that. But, you know, overall, this first half of this season, it was good. It was good up until episode 6, and it was very anticlimactic, and that's unfortunate. I'm glad that Sarah Paulson will be in Death Valley. We see her playing a character. I don't think it's going to have any connection to TB Karen, but it's nice to see her in there. We also see, forgot, I don't know why her name just went out. Rab, the one who played Doris. She's also going to be in there. She seems to be playing, from my understanding, she seems to be playing a historical figure. I don't want to spoil it for people who don't know who she might be playing, but she seems to be playing a historical figure, not Doris, but that she'll be there as well. So it's good stuff. And we do know, because Angelica Ross, who plays the chemist, is listed as in the cast list for Death Valley. So I do think she will be returning. And I actually think she'll be returning as the chemist. So I hope that we'll see a full connection. If we don't, well, I will be disappointed, and I'll have to keep it as the 1980, what was it, 1984 American Horror Story still being my favorite so far. If this ends up not being a thing, because aliens are my jam. So I'm really hoping that they do a really good job. But you know what's so crazy about this rest of the season? There's only 4 episodes. So it's not even full 6. So a lot of stuff is going to have to happen in 4 episodes, right? From my understanding, I believe it's 4 episodes. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So that's a lot to be happening. So there's a lot going on there. But yeah, y'all. I was disappointed. It sounded like y'all were disappointed too. But all in all, like Mark pointed out, I will, God willing, be watching episode 7, because I do want to see where all this leads to, even if it doesn't lead to anything. Right. But yeah, thank you all for joining for Red Tide. We'll be back talking episode 7, Death Valley, and we'll see where that goes. You know, and if you haven't already, for those of you who, so Betty is pointing out, and I agree with this, because maybe this would have made it so that the season was not so rushed, or this ending wasn't so rushed, that this was a whole season. This could have been a whole season, and maybe had it been a whole season, it would have been rushed the way it was. So I don't know. And Mark is saying the chemist has to be Julia, Kit's daughter from Asylum, if she is the chemist in both parts. Okay, that's a good theory. And Jorge, thank you so much. Let's all give it up for Jorge with the $10, $9.99 super chat. Always a pleasure having you in the chats. Love your comment. Just upsetting how everything was handed to us and no nuances or legit surprises. Episode 5 was done so well. Almost wanted them to add the first half of this episode to that episode. I agree. This was a solid season. That's what's so, I think that's the main thing that's so disappointing to me. Had this season been kind of like, okay, that was good, but this was that, okay, so this season finale was crap. The thing was that this was done so well up until the last episode. The past characters, the Belle, Austin, TB Karen, Mickey, all of this was done so well. The horror was done so well. And then we got that. And it was just like, why? I mean, I don't even understand why it was only 32 minutes, y'all. That was another thing that threw me off. I was like, did they really not have much plot left? that it was only that? Like, they really had nothing else they could. I mean, could we have maybe seen that Karen survived? Did Doris start a revolution of the Pell people? There were so many other things we could have got going. And they were just like, nah, we're just going to make this half an hour and we're done. Go to Death Valley next. Wow. Like, I agree with you. Episode 5 was legit probably one of the best ones of that season, of how just intense it was. And then this is what we got. So I agree with you, Jorge. It was what it was. So yeah. But thank you so much for the 999. Let's all give a hand to that, a clap. It's always appreciated. I love talking stories with you all. It's always so fun to do that here. So Betty is saying a filler episode was the finale. It really was, wasn't it? Wow. A filler episode really was the finale, y'all. That's bad. But maybe it was because, and this is why I say, this is why I really do think this is going to be connected. This is why I think this is going to be connected, because of the fact that that finale was such a filler kind of lackluster thing, right? Like, it had to, I mean, they've got to be like, well, hey, okay, you guys might be mad at this, but believe you me, at the end of these 4 episodes of this back season, y'all are going to be like, oh my gosh, this all makes sense now. I just have hope. I shouldn't, because we've seen enough of being disappointed sometimes with this show, but I have hope. Marcus saying Doris did not die with the rest of the Pells. Where'd she go? Right? One can hope. I also still have hope for Doris, right? But yeah, y'all, it's let's hope the second half of this gets better. Let's hope it redeems itself with the first episode of Death Valley. Fingers crossed for that. Also, y'all, if you are watching Midnight Mass on Netflix, I have a published article of a spoiler-free kind of deep dive analysis of Midnight Mass when it comes to class and religion and what the horror genre does with Midnight Mass. Check that out. It's in the community section of the YouTube of my channel if you want to check that out. But also, if you are watching Midnight Mass, I will be doing a spoiler discussion of it, a live stream spoiler discussion of it. So look back here for that, because I'll let you know the date soon enough. And if you are watching Evil, come check out me and my mama as we do the live stream of that. And also, if you are watching Why the Last Man, which is also on Hulu and FX, I have been doing live streams of that. So it'll be episode 5 coming up this week if you are checking that out. Join me for that. I love talking TV episodes with you all, and it is always a fun time, and I always appreciate it. And Josh is saying it better be a connection, the two halves of this season. If not, it was terrible, right? If not, I'm going to have to say this is a really bad season if they don't connect it. But once again, y'all, thank you so much for joining me. And until next week, be safe out there and stay getting creepy. We love the horror, and may we get more of it. We got some great stories out there. And if you have stories, tell them to the world. Thanks again, y'all. Definitely, Sabetti. Evil stream coming this Tuesday. Talk to you later.